On the night of March 27, 1999, a stealth aircraft was shot down for the first time in history. Not by a cutting-edge missile system, not by a next-generation radar, by a 30-year-old Soviet-era radar that the United States military had already written off as obsolete. That is not the story most people tell about that night. Most people tell the story of the pilot, the ejection, the rescue, the orange parachute. That story is real, but it's missing half the picture, because the more important story happened on the ground, hours before the missile ever launched. One man figured out how to kill a ghost. This is how he did it. To understand what happened over Serbia that night, you need to understand what the F-117 Nighthawk actually was. The United States had spent 12 years and roughly $6.6 billion developing it. 64 aircraft built, each one shaped with angled, faceted surfaces specifically designed to scatter radar energy away from the receiver. At its full radar cross-section, the Nighthawk appeared on screen as an object roughly the size of a tennis ball, a 65-foot combat aircraft, invisible. It had flown over 1,300 combat sorties without a single loss. Desert Storm, Iraq, Bosnia. No kills against it, not one. The aircraft's operators believed it was effectively undetectable in contested airspace. That belief was not irrational. It was based on a 12-year operational record. The pilot that night was Lieutenant Colonel Darrell Zelko. His call sign was Vega 31. His target was the Serbian Air Force Command Center in Belgrade, the headquarters directing air defenses across the country. He had F-16 escorts carrying anti-radiation missiles, the kind that lock onto enemy radar and destroy it before it can track anything. The weather was terrible. Low cloud ceiling, rain, lightning. As Zelko crossed into Serbian airspace, a command came over the radio. The weather was too bad for the escort to continue. The F-16S turned around. He flew on alone. This was standard operating procedure for Nighthawk missions. The aircraft didn't need escorts. It was the escort. On the ground, 30 kilometers northwest of Belgrade, a Serbian army officer named Lieutenant Colonel Zoltán Dani was running the 3rd Battalion of the 250th Air Defense Missile Brigade. His unit was equipped with the SA-3 Neva, a surface-to-air missile system first deployed in 1961. The United States had cataloged it, war-gamed against it, and largely dismissed it as a credible threat to modern stealth aircraft. Dani knew this. He also knew something else. He had been watching NATO air operations for 8 days. He had noticed a pattern. Nighthawks flew the same routes on consecutive nights. They flew at predictable altitudes. They flew at predictable times. He had been building a mental model of how the ghost operated, and he had a theory about how to find it. His radar was a P-18, a metric-wavelength early warning system. It operated at a frequency around 190 megahertz. This matters. The angled geometry of the Nighthawk was designed to defeat centimetric radar, the kind used by targeting systems and most modern air defense networks. Metric wavelength radar is different. The longer wavelengths interact with an aircraft's edges and seams in ways that shorter wavelengths don't. It can't give you a precise targeting solution, but it can tell you something is there. Dani had suspected this. He had tested the theory on previous nights. He believed he had picked up faint returns consistent with the Nighthawk's flight path. Let that sit for a moment. The United States had spent billions engineering a solution to centimetric radar, and a Serbian officer with a Cold War-era system operating on a completely different part of the electromagnetic spectrum had found the gap. Dani ran his radar in short bursts. This is important. The SA-3's targeting radar, the one that actually guides missiles, emits strongly and can be detected and destroyed by anti-radiation missiles. Extended emissions meant death. He had trained his crew to power up, acquire, and shut down in seconds. He kept radio emissions minimal. He shifted frequencies when he could. He used terrain to mask his position. He did everything the book said to do and several things the book didn't mention. His discipline kept his unit alive for 8 days while other Serbian batteries were being hunted and killed around him. At 8:15 p.m., the P-18 lit up. Dani saw a return. One small contact moving at altitude on the exact heading he had predicted. His crew confirmed it on the metric radar. They could see the target. The targeting radar, the SA-3's SNR-125, was still off. If he powered it up too early, Zelko's warning system would detect the lock and he'd have seconds to evade. Dani waited. The aircraft was closing. His crew called out the seconds. No lock on the targeting radar. The contact was there on the P-18, getting closer. Then Zelko opened his bomb bay doors to release his weapons over Belgrade. The bomb bay doors disrupted the aircraft's stealth geometry. The radar cross-section spiked. For a few seconds, the Nighthawk was no longer a tennis ball. Dani ordered the targeting radar on. His crew got a lock in seconds. 2 V-601 missiles left the launchers. Zelko dropped his bombs, climbed through 6,000 meters, and was ascending when his cockpit lit up with a lock warning. He saw the missile trails rising through the clouds below him. He pulled hard. The first missile malfunctioned and passed close enough to rattle the aircraft. The second one didn't malfunction. It detonated close to the left wing. The shrapnel cloud shredded the airframe. The Nighthawk went into an uncontrolled spin. Zelko was pinned in his seat under 7 Gs. He fought for the ejection handle with both arms. He pulled. The canopy blew. His seat fired. He fell for nearly 2 seconds, barely conscious before the parachute deployed. He looked up and saw it. Bright orange, standard-issue survival parachute. He was floating over occupied Serbian territory under a beacon that could be spotted from kilometers away. Below him, news of the downed aircraft was already moving. Serbian army units, police, and civilians were fanning out across the countryside. Flashlights swept the fields. Trucks moved along every road. Zelko hit the ground near a drainage ditch. He covered himself in mud and got in. He could hear the search getting closer. At one point, a dog worked its way toward his position. He drew his knife. He held still. The dog turned away. For nearly 6 hours, he stayed in that ditch while the search moved around him. His rescue controllers had picked up his Mayday call and were coordinating recovery assets, but the threat picture on the ground was dense. Every approach carried risk. When the rescue helicopters finally came in, Zelko's infrared strobe failed. He was left with one option. He popped a visible flare. Light flooded the field. His position was instantly obvious to every search party within range. The rescue helicopter swept in, landed directly in front of him, and lifted off with seconds to spare. Zoltán Dani and his crew had done something no military force on Earth had managed across more than a decade of Nighthawk operations. They used a radar system old enough to have been obsolete before the Nighthawk was even designed. They used timing, discipline, frequency selection, and pattern recognition. They used the aircraft's own weapon release against it. The United States did not destroy the wreckage. Serbian forces recovered it largely intact, documented it, studied it. Pieces of Zelko's aircraft remain on display today at the Museum of Aviation in Belgrade. Dani was celebrated in Serbia as a national hero. When asked what it felt like to see the missile connect, he said it felt like scoring the winning goal in a football match. Zelko spent years wanting to meet the man who shot him down. In 2011, 12 years after that night over Serbia, he finally got his wish. The two men met, sat together, and talked for hours. What they said to each other has never been fully reported. Zelko later described Dani as a professional who had done his job exactly as a professional soldier should. Dani said much the same about Zelko, 2 officers on opposite sides of the same night, 12 years later, sitting across a table from each other. The stealth aircraft that was never supposed to be found. The radar operator who had already figured out where to look before it ever crossed the border.